first of all, I love bees, so this was great to see. And Dr. Sammy, seeing you like talk about like how they were playing, I already
hmm
knew about that experiment. So I was
hmm
very curious. With you and James Cameron, what are some of the things that you talked about in terms of experiments that can be done, different things that people can learn about how to interact with bees, especially seeing bees in the wild, and some experiments that, maybe will help bee populations in the future?
Yes. So for this documentary, there's work that had already been conducted that we were really excited to show on camera. I had spent maybe 2 years to that point already teaching. No, that was the end of my first year. Yeah. So about a year and some change. Working at the university, teaching about the exciting experiments that were going on. So then to have the opportunity to show these experiments to people, to show the famous bumblebee play experiment was really exciting. But then I started thinking about other things that we might be able to show. And I thought about this fascinating scientific paper that came out. I believe the researcher who conducted the study was Canadian, but she was doing her work in Vietnam. And she showed that the bees, when they have this really, really, really scary context of hornets attacking their colony, that they have a life or death situation presented to them. If they do not do something about that scout, their entire colony is going to die, and there's no question about it. There's no other way to escape. If that scout that's entered the colony is able to take a sample back to her girls and start handing it out like she in Costco, there will be problems. And so when the hornet leaves the colony after she's gotten that sample, she's like, "This is good. I need to make sure that the sister squadron knows how to get back here." So she creates this pheromone pattern on the front of the colony. If the bees don't erase that pheromone pattern, they're dead. But you can't just lick it off. It's this complex blend of volatilized lipids that are stuck to the wood itself of the colony. So the bees would fly out and grab water buffalo dung and rub it over the smell so that they could cover the smell with something else. And when the hornets try to fly back, they couldn't find the colony. But what we didn't know was that the bees were thinking of this much more expansively than we thought. We thought maybe evolution had primed them to grab something that was stinky. They were smart enough to realize any smell that's strong can do the job. So for the very first time, we captured on camera them actually collecting leaves. Very, very pungent leaves with beautiful smells to them, but smells that are so strong that when you chew up those leaves, it's the only thing that you can smell. And they rubbed that over the really concerning pheromones that were left behind by the hornets, and it saved those organisms' lives. And that's really given me this expansive idea of what can be accomplished via documentary research. Because when we go over there to film something, we still get to do the research itself. That research can end up in scientific journals. That research can really help people in a number of ways. And the documentary itself can be that conduit to actually get that work done. So now, what I'm very interested in is that there is this parasitic mite that's been running around the world. It's not the one that you saw in the documentary, the varroa mite, but it's actually the Tropicalaps mite. And these Tropicalaps mites, they're from the same region of the world. They're also from Southeast Asia, where most diseases of honeybees emerge, and they are incredibly devastating. When they reached Pakistan, within 10 years, they had killed off the entire honeybee population, which is insane. And we are making a really scary mistake in choosing to wait until they arrive in the US to study them. I want to study them now. And so, tracking the spread of these parasites as they move around the world, learning how they're able to spread so effectively, that's the kind of stuff that if we go over there to film them, it gives me the opportunity to do some really cool research that would be prohibitively expensive otherwise. And I'm already discussing this with National Geographic. And so, y'all, will just have to wait a little bit to see what comes of it.
Nice. Thank you so much. And your work
You're
is so
welcome.
important, and I love your enthusiasm. It's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. I appreciate it.
So I was really curious about a bee that I did not see in the documentary, because there
Oh.
were so many different ones. I
hmm
think I didn't. I wanted to make sure, but the Africanized honeybee.
Aha. Yes, you did not see them
And
in.
okay, and so I was wondering if you could talk a bit about those and how they kind of fit into the ecosystems with the different types of bees. And I always hear scary things about the Africanized honeybees. So I just want to know
Mhm.
if you could go into that a little bit. Right.
Yeah, folks been out here hating. It's fine. Like, so what had happened was the bumblebees or the honeybees in the US, they're really good at what they do. They are great at pollination. They make colonies of 60,000 individuals, and all of those individuals are able to coordinate their feeding processes such that they're really good at collecting food, making honey, pollinating plants. Phenomenal. But they're not always that great in tropical contexts. The ones that we have in the US are better adapted to temperate contexts where they have to overwinter for a while and then come out of that. And so, in more tropical areas, especially regions like Brazil, the researchers there were like, "How do we build a better bee? Well, maybe we need to actually get ours from tropical areas because the ones that are actually in Brazil, they're from Europe. They were brought over with the settlers. They came over on the ships immediately after the Mayflower. It's actually quite remarkable to consider, but there are no honeybees that are actually native to either of the Americas. And so these researchers actually got bees that were adapted to Africa, which the parts of Africa that they collected from had similar climates to Brazil. They brought them over and they tried to get them to um, cross uh, cross pollinate, if you will, to mate with the queens of the European bees, and they did, and it was great until one person made one mistake. He did not put the what we call a queen excluder on the colony. It keeps the colony there's a queen excluder on the colony. There's also a swarm catcher on the colony to keep the colony from swarming, and he forgot to put that on the colony, and a bunch of the queens escaped. And they made it into the environment, did a great job of establishing themselves, and then started migrating farther and farther north. And when we heard this, in the US, we freaked out. We're like, they're going to kill us all. These Africanized honeybees are going to be the end of us. And we thought that they were going to dramatically elevate the number of deaths from stinging insects in the US every year. And then they arrived, and there's a really great article that was written about the response because we spent money on the response. We were going to try to figure out how to protect ourselves from them in all these different ways. And the article, the title is Africanized Honeybees Arrived with a Whimper. And it was just like nothing happened, guys. Like they showed up, and turns out African things aren't as scary as we thought they were. So, we have really been trying to get people to better understand now that science has taken some serious turns since then. We have been really working hard because that was a wake-up call for us. That was a moment for us to recognize that there were some aspects of xenophobia that had made their way into our science, and it changed the way that we were thinking about what should have been an unbiased scientific way of looking at the world. It really made its way in there. I've been doing some studies of what we've been referring to as Africanized bees, and it just turns out that they are not as scary or as aggressive or as problematic as we originally thought they were. They are still a bit more aggressive, and they do swarm more often than the European honeybees that are typically managed by beekeepers in the U.S. But aside from that, they're pretty chill. That's one of the reasons why you don't see them in the documentary. There's not a lot of drama there. There was not a huge story to tell. I think they should get their own story and their own documentary someday because a lot of people, when sometimes there is a lot of fear around a particular subject, a lot of hype, and then you don't really hear about the resolution. So many people heard everything about the murder hornets and heard nothing about how that problem was resolved. And one of the reasons for that is that that's not always as attention grabbing as the actual drama of what was going on.
Nice, nice. Thank you so much. And I knew it. I knew it. I knew they weren't as bad. I
Hmm.
had,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So thank you. Thank you for
You're
explaining them.
welcome. Of course.